So good evening. I don't think right now we've got anybody online, but we're also monitoring both Zoom and Facebook. So since we have a few more people tonight than what we had last week, probably need to go a little more structured than we did last week, in so much as we were pretty fluid with back and forth, and I think we can get to some of that. But I think what I want to do to make sure that everybody has a chance to ask their questions is so that we can hear on, because we're taping this, so everybody can hear. I would politely request that you go to the podium. Do we have the wireless mic? Okay. The other option, certainly to be respectful, we do have a wireless mic, and that would keep you from having to go to the podium. So we'll just go that route. That way we don't have any mobility issues. So if you would, just let's go one question at a time. And if you have a statement that you're making, I'd ask politely that you limit it to 4 minutes. So would you like to start?
Sure. My wife and I have been in the car wash business for about 25 years now. And,
If you would, sir, use the mic.
okay, my wife and I have been in the car wash business about 25 years now.
Okay.
I can talk louder.
I'm just asking. I'm just asking if the mic's working.
Okay, is it? Yes. All right. And back in 2000, that's what the letter I left on your desk there.
Right.
We were paying about $390 for 100,000 gallons of water.
Okay.
And today, we're paying about, as of the rate increase that went into effect in January, about $1,225. I mean, that's probably close to a 175, 180% increase over 20 years or 25 years. And the reason for the increases that the water department expresses is that it's the same, where they're facing an aging infrastructure. And I understand that those type of things have to be replaced from as you go, but where is this going to end? To me, my electrical rates haven't increased, 175% over that time frame, or gas, or any other utilities. Is it that we got so far behind we're never going to catch up? Or I don't know where the stability ever comes in. And they started off with what a 10 to 11% increase over the next 3 years going forward, starting in 2024.
So
where's the money going?
Well, the money's going in to provide clean, safe drinking water.
Okay.
And what I can tell you is that our cost of chemicals alone for chlorine are up between 40 and 50%.
From when?
From last year.
From last year?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're talking about a 20-year period here, or 25-year period. How does Topeka's water rates compare to other cities?
So let me show you.
Okay, and basically, they have all these different categories, like wastewater, the water you actually bring in, all these different storm sewer charges and stuff like that. But the bottom line is that it's gone up over 175% over the last 25 years or more.
Okay, so on the screen in front of you,
Yeah.
gives you a comparison as to how we stack up against other communities. We're right in the middle. There are orange bars and there's yellow bars. The orange bars are other communities. Lawrence is on the top as the most expensive. On the bottom, you have Wichita and Cedar Rapids, Iowa. Our 23 rates is the lowest gold bar, yellow bar. The one above it is the proposed 2024 rates as they compare against everybody else's 23 rates. So we're giving you 24 against everybody else's 23, and we still stack in the middle.
So what, for instance, what's 100,000 gallons of water cost in Lawrence?
Well,
Give me a minute, I can calculate it.
okay.
You know, the refuge charge, I know what that's for. But the rest is all water related.
I can tell you it costs
And
more.
the wastewater is like 20 or 30% more than the water I bring in.
I can tell you it costs more than what ours is. I mean, as she's looking it up, I know that for fact.
Okay, how much does 100,000 gallons cost?
She's looking it up.
Okay.
While we're waiting on that one, do we have another question? Shamika, do you have a question? I'm just giving you the opportunity.
Good evening, everyone. Shamika King Sims, Historic Old Town NIA and Citizen Advisory Council. I think my comment is I just appreciate the work that's been done to try and make this as reasonable as it can be. Again, understanding that infrastructure needs to be replaced, and clean drinking water is not negotiable, right? These are things that we need. So I think I would just echo the comments that I believe Councilwoman Christina said yesterday, which is that we're continuing to look at grants and ways that we could, just kind of defray the costs. So that's my only comment tonight. I'm just here to listen.
So we are looking for grants. Those grants are targeted at infrastructure itself. They are not we don't have the ability to apply those against rates. So we did receive a favorable borrowing rate from the state earlier this year on over $60 million of borrowing. That reduced borrowing rate, in essence, is the result of federal funds that came to the state of Kansas that allows them to put money into a revolving loan fund. And so we did receive significant savings from that borrowing. As far as other state funds, federal funds, we're constantly looking for those items. Sir, you asked the question, are things going to change? And I can honestly tell you no. Right now we are over $80 million beyond getting to 150-year replacement cycles. Best practice is 100 or 125? 100-year replacement cycles. That's best practice. We're $80 million outside of 150. That's not going to change anytime soon. What I said to council last night was we hope, and we're playing with some economic models right now, we hope to get to where we can look at cost of inflation plus a premium for borrowing. There's $300 million of debt that we have to service. And at this point in time, that's not going away anytime soon. So I don't want anybody thinking that this is the last of rate increases, because it's not. I don't see any way that we don't continue to have them. We hope to be able to get it closer to the cost of inflation. And I am very proud to say that the rate increases that we are seeking are below the cost of inflation now. So that is a plus. We did work to adjust rates from what was previously proposed in December, and they have come down a couple of percentage points. Sir, they have.
I mean, you start out at 11, and you come down to 9. That's something. But we've been doing 6 and 5 and 6 and 5. forever.
And cost of inflation has almost doubled from that.
But the inflation has not been at the levels that it is now for all those 20 years. You've been running around 2%.
Okay, I can't speak to 20 years ago.
Well, I can, and prior to our current administration, inflation was about 2%, and had been running at that for the last 10 years or more.
All I can tell you is what's on the screen behind you, or behind me in front of you. We are very competitive with our rates. We're extremely competitive with our rates. We work hard to be there. And the rate increase that we're asking for right now is less than the cost of inflation year over year. It is. Our cost...
Inflation running at 6% right now.
Well, and year over year, we're closer to 9 plus. Yes, sir.
Since when?
If you look at year over year, we're running 9 plus.
I know. When you say year over year, starting when?
22 to 23.
Oh, okay. Well, that's, when inflation was a lot higher a year ago.
And our cost of chemicals to produce the water represent that cost increase.
I can give you that for 22, 23. What about all the years prior?
I hear your objection. Again, we're very competitive with our rates.
My question is, how did we get so far behind the ball
For the longest...
with the infrastructure problem?
Fair question.
Which is the one that's costing the most, right?
Okay, fair question. For several years, we were not putting money into water main replacement. So we're now $80 million upside down of even getting to a 150-year replacement. We're way behind the curve. Sir?
Well, you're saying we're behind on line replacements and everything else for water, but what about we're being billed for wastewater? So does that include our sanitary sewers then, that this is also part of the same water solution? Or is it just we're looking at having fresh water and that's it, even though we're being charged for the wastewater? Is the money also going into the maintenance of the sanitary sewers?
It does. It absolutely is.
And the same cost of treatment for that. So we still have permits and regulatory requirements that we have to meet. So we're looking at the lines and then what's happening at the plant, making sure we're replacing at responsible levels so that we don't find ourselves in a jam. And the chemicals that we use on that side of the house have gone up the same. It's everywhere.
I just have one question about the wastewater versus the water. I mean, we're bringing in our water out of the Kansas River, right? That's not very good water to start with. And the water that's going back out is, not
Much
the best
cleaner.
either.
No, it's much cleaner than what we're
Yeah,
pulling
so
out.
why is the wastewater cost more? They charge us, the rate for wastewater is more than the rate for the good water coming in.
We actually treat a lot of wastewater because our system is so old. We do have a portion of the city that's combined systems. So where back when Topeka was being developed, we have old parts of town that maybe the storm sewers are connected to the sanitary sewers. That means during rain events, we're treating a lot more wastewater than the amount that's coming in. If we have industry that's using water as part of their production, they may be using water that isn't going into our system, but that doesn't necessarily offset some of that increase that we have during those major rain events. So that's an impact too, and that has a difference. We do spend a lot of money, dollars, chemically treating the water that we're pulling from the river because of the quality of that water, but it takes very large systems to treat that as well.
Well, I know, but I still don't understand why the wastewater costs more than the water coming out of the river.
Sure,
Or why the rates are so,
I think
it's like 20 or so % higher.
we would have to dig into the study to show finite information to that, but that's what when we hire folks to help us with these rate models and do these rate studies, they are looking at those different costs of services and what is it really costing us. We have greater wastewater infrastructure. There's a lot more pump stations when it comes to treating wastewater because it's gravity fed, and we have to have the infrastructure to pump that water up and back to the next high point to bring it down. That's a lot of technical stuff, but we have 2 wastewater plants as opposed to 1 large water facility where there's 3 plants in one, but still, it's just different infrastructure. Sure.
A lot of our regulatory obligations obviously are controlled by KDHE and the EPA.
Sure, I understand that.
And so it's not cheap.
Thank you. May I speak?
Yeah.
Got several things here. There used to be, he might have retired now, the head of the processing of the clean water used to have an argument about every rate increase with the head of the utility company. And he thought if you lower the rate, you will have more usage of water, then you will have more revenue. And it went back and forth, back and forth. He never won his point. But he may be true on that. Have you looked at it? Second thing, I've tried to find it, but vehicles are much more reliable than they used to be. A lot of fleets are going to 12 years on vehicles instead of the 6 or 7 years right now that we have. Have we even looked at that? Because they don't break down like they used to.
Fleet vehicles? Yes. Yes, we're running a lot of trucks that are from 2002. In fact, I was having that conversation earlier today.
And those are the
It's also a very small part of our total expenses.
Yeah, those are the specialty vehicles.
I'm talking about regular pickup trucks.
All right, I was fine.
So, I mean, yes, we try very hard to make sure that we maximize the life on our vehicles, and in some cases, they get passed down to other departments.
Because I was talking to Public Works, the doctor, I forgot his last name,
Dr. Peak?
Dr. Pete, yes. And, he's left the city, but at that time, he was appalled that we have some vehicles on the road that are 8 years old. And I thought, dude, come on.
Nicole, you can correct me, but I'm pretty sure we've stripped vehicle replacement out of the 24 budget. I hear you. We're treating that very seriously. Were you able to find that?
I did. Do you want me to? I gave it to you, or I can. I found the numbers. 100,000 gallons in Lawrence today would cost $1,844. 100,000 gallons of water that we're proposing for 2024 would cost you $1,145. Here.
It can't be, because I just got a bill for 105,000 and it was like 1,250.
I'm just looking at water and wastewater because I think those were the numbers that you were providing before.
Well, then
I'm happy to take a look
they
at it.
throw
Yeah.
in storm sewer
Yeah.
on that, and those are included on that bill, which to me, one bill is what it
Water
costs
bill,
me for water.
And I also assumed a 1-inch meter. I don't know if you have a larger meter with it.
Yeah, it's a 2-inch at one and a 1.5 inch at the other. But
Okay. That would have a little bit more impact on that, but yeah, so around that $1,100, $1,200.
so the size of your meter dictates the rate,
It doesn't dictate the rate, but it dictates,
or has an influence on it?
it has an influence on that base charge currently. What's that?
Why would that be?
Oh, I can't give you the engineering explanation, but basically it comes into the cost of servicing that infrastructure and the demand that you can pull on the system because of the larger meter. That's the basic gist of it. However, we do have rate classes, you are receiving a lower rate as a commercial class than, say, I am in my home as a residential user. I pay a higher rate than you would as a commercial customer.
And we're significantly less than Lawrence. Significantly.
Yeah, if Lawrence's is 1,800, yeah, that's quite a bit less.
Yeah.
What's Wichita's?
I don't know.
Would you like to meet after this? We can go over a bunch of them.
That's what I saw on there.
So,
What
any
are
other,
they doing there?
what other questions do you have, sir?
Just, I guess my only option is to put a sewer meter on my wastewater. And then I would be able to, because the industry has told me that 20 to 40% of the water I use never goes out the sewer. It's either carried off, vaporized, evaporated, blown out with the wind.
We'd be happy to have some conversations with you offline on what your options might be to help lower your bill.
Okay, that'd be great. Who could I talk to about that?
These two ladies right up front.
Okay,
Okay. Other questions?
all right now.
Okay. Sir?
The only questions I have right now are, in October 12th of last year, a large hole developed in the alley in the old neighborhood I used to live in. And 4 of the city crew were sitting around waiting and waiting and waiting for someone to show up, and it happened to be the plumber that had done a service on a line, and that line was given permission to bypass a certain way, so the Y was left open, and it caused a huge sinkhole in concrete alleyway in the 200 block of Western. But it was looked at on October 12th by 4 city crews and the plumber, and the crew said, well, we're not going to get it right away. It'll be in the next few weeks. It's still wide open. The hole's increased in size, and I'm surprised we haven't lost one of our sanitation trucks going down that alley, because it's been over 5 months. And it's because it's in an old neighborhood, there's no priority of looking at that infrastructure being, salvaged and saved and everything else. And it's kind of hit and miss where we get services within this community too. I mean, when you live in the old part of Topeka, you're in the old historic Ward Meade district, half the homes aren't owner occupied, over half the homes. And it's all looked at as kind of a cast off, I think. Same thing with Oakland, same thing with areas of Highland Park, same thing with Central Park areas. There's areas that need attention. They're being ignored because they're not the new, improved, and greater Topeka, but yet it's people having these problems, conditions that are such that things aren't being done right. And I'm just, who do we go to for accountability within the city organization? I mean, you as city manager are over all these departments, but the thing is, when you go to one department, oh, that's water, oh, that's street, oh, that's wastewater, and they say, oh, there's so many departments involved, we can't tell you who's involved with what. I think that there needs to be some clarification of, we all work for the same company as far as the city employees, and that company happens to be the citizens of Topeka that are paying for this and everything else, and they're all working for the same management and everything else. There just needs to be some responsibility, accountability, and everything else. I mean, we're reaching out now where we can't even hire city workers from within the city. We have to go out in the county, or we have to go elsewhere. I, at one time, between jobs, got stuck working for a locating service. And the head of the water department lived in Wamego. And when there was emergencies at night, you had to wait for an hour for that person to even get close. And you were doing locates. And it's just that everything becomes so convoluted that we can't find out who's responsible. It's like the city's an LLC, and you can never find out who is really in charge of what. And as city manager, you've got that responsibility, But then again, you've got all those managers under you. Who's responsible in each area? I mean, when we're looking at public works, you know, who is in charge of actual public works?
Braxton Copley.
And then he breaks that down into the other sections of who's doing what job within, you know, under public works.
We have deputy directors there, yes.
Okay, all right. But I mean, there's no pride in ownership and accountability anymore within this community. When you ask somebody something, they cast it off, they cast it off, and they cast it off. And it's not what the public wants to hear. Especially, and like I say, I used to live in the old Ward Mead area of town. And to get somebody to respond there to something takes a long time. You move to a different part of town and you got response within 5 minutes on police and fire and everything else. And it's not because there's not police and fire in that part of town. It's just there's a lack of care. And I mean, it all comes under the same thing. Like I say, there's a hole in the street that's right behind somebody's garage. They can't even use one of their garage doors because of it. And they're elderly, they're semi-disabled, and everything else, and nobody cares enough to do anything about it.
So
Like I say.
I want to address a couple things that you have shared today. First of all, I want to get that address so we can follow up. I can follow up on that. When we call those voids, when we have holes in our lines that create a hole on the surface. So when we are trying to work with a customer, if that void is caused by their private line, we do attempt to work with them because they're the ones that have to pay for the fix, right?
The private line was repaired, it was bypassed around the garage and attached at the Y, and the city okayed it. So it's the
And
city's
that's what, yes,
responsibility.
I want to make sure that I follow up on that and get those details, and we do want to make sure that that surface is restored. I know that when we have alleys, it does get a little tricky because we have limits that we set to fix issues like this, but at the same time, we want to work with people and allow them the appropriate time to get some of these repairs made. So let me just check into that one and follow up on that. We do know that sometimes when we're trying to be helpful for one, it impacts somebody else. To your comments about older parts of town getting less service, when it comes to maintenance of our sanitary lines, we actually maintain the older parts of town on a much more regular frequency. So a newer part of town, because the material that's placed in for that infrastructure is newer, it's newer material, it's newer installation dates, we might hit the cleaning of that line, wastewater again, once every 7 years. If it's a little bit older, maybe it's once every 5. But in some of these old parts of town where we know we have a lot of failing lines or cracks that might have left roots in there, we send our crews out to hot spots every 6 months. Some are once a year or once every 2 years, just to make sure that we can keep those lines open and flowing, because we know the potential there is greater. So before we can come in and repair the entire or replace the entire line, we do up our service to that. Whether that's seen or not is different. We can enter that system from one manhole at one intersection, and they may be working several hundred feet down the line, and you may never see that. But we do try to make sure that our maintenance is much more frequent in problem areas because of that age of infrastructure.
Sir, I can also tell you 2 things in response. Number one, we are one city. That is something we stress very strongly. And number 2, I can assure you that we do not make decisions based on income. We don't.
Well, I realize that, but I think sometimes the response is influenced by different influences outside of your control. There's politics involved in a lot of things.
I promise you, sir, that's not accurate. Sir, I can promise you that's not
I
accurate.
ran for mayor a year and a half ago, and I saw the politics. Okay. So, I mean, I see the politics that comes into play. I see your concern as the new city manager, because when I spoke with the old city manager, that's what made me run for office, because words that came out of his mouth were such untruths as someone that stood in as the Ward Mead president of the NIA and things like that, to hear something come out of a city manager's mouth when he's talking to you in a private conversation that's a lie, that got me to run for office. I don't expect that from you either, and I don't want to hear that from you or to find out later that an untruth has come of this, but it happens sometimes when you don't know something. I mean, running for office, I didn't understand the College Hill TIF at the time, and I was blasted in the paper for being ignorant on the subject instead of making up a lie and saying something and just being truthful, saying, I haven't looked into it and I don't know the result, and the newspaper blasts you for it. And if, when I look at TIF, I sometimes think it's, Topeka's infrastructure failures. Is that what it stands for? I mean, that's the thing. When you're given an acronym and you didn't prepare for that part of it when you were given the list of, subjects that were going to be discussed, that wasn't in there. And coming into the job, you've been with the city for years, so the involvement in this city and trying to get things done. And you run into brick walls and everything else. But when we're doing all these expansions now on the southwest side of town with a new 20-some houses being built in one area and other things like that, we're extending our infrastructure even farther. Who actually builds that infrastructure for the sewer, the water, and all that stuff? Is it the developer? And that's handed back to the city to maintain? What are the concerns of, we keep on expanding ourselves farther and farther without building new facilities for water treatment, wastewater, and all that, trying to get it all to come to one place, and knowing that we don't have the financial income off of the tax structure to support, like you say, we're so far behind now on a lot of the water projects that we may never catch up. But yet we keep on expanding and allowing these increases to our system. Who's responsible for those? I mean, we don't have the city planner here, so I don't know if, Bill Fyander knows what's going on or who or what.
A lot of that's done through specials. So are you yourself?
Special assessments will be assessed to those properties at the time and things.
That's correct.
But like I say, then when does it revert back to the city that the cost of maintaining it and everything else too? I mean, how soon is that? I mean, I just question some of the stuff that I've seen. Is like I say, when seeing that one problem in that alley has existed for over 5 months, the hole's getting bigger.
We're going to address the hole.
I understand, but a group of 4 employees were there for 2.5 hours, waiting for somebody to show up, and they said, well, we can't get to it today. It'll be done in the next month. I mean, I'm not trying to put anybody on a hot seat right now. I'm just saying observations of where the money's being spent, how it's being spent, who's actually going to take ownership of the responsibility for this.
So what I can tell you in regards to specials is that when a special district is assigned, it is not only the cost of installation at that point in time, but it is long-term maintenance. That is part of the review that's done when those amounts are determined.
Okay. So that'll be all part of the public knowledge there as far as those new developments and how long those specials will be in effect and how much, will be restitution towards the city for the, building of it and maintaining it.
They're all public documents.
Okay, all right. But it's sometimes when LLCs are doing it, it's kind of hard to follow and find out who's actually doing it.
Understood.
Okay. I appreciate your response and everything else, and I wish you well in your position.
Thank you.
Like I say, you've been with the city for years, so you know what's going on. And the management isn't going to be that easy, but to have the people that you know around you all the time, that helps somewhat. But
I've got a
it's
good team.
appreciated.
I have a good team. Thank you. So, other questions, comments?
Just super quick. So you did mention that this is clearly not going to be the last time we hear about rate increases.
Correct.
So just a comment of, I would love to learn like what you guys learned from all of this and what you'll do differently moving forward, so that when we have these conversations, which are still probably going to be tense and uncomfortable, how do we help people process change in a way where they're, I don't want to say more accepting, but at least a little bit more invested in the process up front. Does that make sense? So I don't know if that's a reflection that comes after the process, the budget, or not the budget, but the proposal is passed, or as the process of getting those lines changed out starts. But that is something that I would like to see, is like, what were the lessons learned from this? So that's my comment. And thank you.
The only thing I can tell you is that, we're doing 3 of these right now. We certainly listened in December and January. We wanted to make sure that we had those earlier in the process for this continued conversation. As far as how do you give advance warning, I don't know how to answer your question, other than what you're hearing me say today is that these rate increases will continue. They have to continue.
No, and I don't expect an answer. That was more of a reflection for the team. You know what I mean? Just okay, so this is what our experience has been. Now we kind of understand where people are coming from, so what would we do differently? That kind of conversation. But that would probably be internal, so that's it.
Thanks. Yes, sir.
Now, we put in consideration raising those of them outside of the city, the water rates substantially more. Here's reading, we use the credits, they already do pay more water. Well, yes and no. But on our utility bills, there's 6, 7 different charges, which doesn't add up. Well, it adds up to our bill, but it's substantially more than what you're paying outside just for water alone. I mean, doubling it. We're trying to increase the city's population here. Why should we be providing inexpensive services outside? We want the city to grow. We continue to lose population. We lost 400 between 2001 or 2000, 2001. When's it going to turn around? Are we going to get to the point that other cities have done? They close off certain parts of the city because the infrastructure is so expensive to maintain there, they'd rather just move the people out of there. I mean, that's 20, 25 years down the pipe. But when's the turnaround going to happen?
Okay, so two answers to that. Number one, our population is up. If you look at the latest numbers, we're up over 1,000.
City of Topeka or the
City-
metro area?
City of Topeka.
I'll go back to the U.S. Census state.
I'll be happy to show you the data.
All right.
And for number two, the rate increases for outside of Topeka is larger than inside the city.
So they will be paying more than the average citizen does with those 6, 7 charges on our bill?
For water, yes, they are paying more.
No, I said the 6 and 7 charges, not just one charge.
I can't charge them for a service that they don't receive.
So we'll still be paying, okay.
I
Bills
can't.
will still be higher. No, well, we can raise that much more to encourage them to live in the city limits.
Other questions? You have anything online? All right. Appreciate your time tonight. Thank you.